Hi everyone! Hope you're doing well. I'm coming to you today live from the closet, which coincidentally is where the protagonist of the book that we're talking about today lives. Hi, my name's Marley. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, but I'm genuinely not wearing any pants for this shot, so I think it would be best if I put some of those on and then went someplace a little bit more comfortable where we can talk a little bit more freely. There. This is much nicer. Today's going to be a little bit different. This won't, I suspect, be a deep dive on the author, nor will it be a comprehensive thematic discussion of everything going on in Giovanni's Room. I just wanted to make this one because I wanted to talk about what's one of my favorite novels of all time, and that's what this is. So, here we go. Buckle the fuck in. Giovanni's Room is by James Baldwin, a man who really should not need any introduction. He was a civil rights activist, an author, a public speaker, and holy shit, this guy could write. I mean, we're talking about stuff like Tell Me How Long the Train's Been Gone, Go Tell It on the Mountain, The Fire Next Time, this book as well. So any of those places are a really good starting point for his work, but we're going to talk about what's my favorite today. Baldwin's work constantly deals with the plight of the oppressed, whether that be the plight of someone who's been the victim of racial bigotry, someone who's been discriminated against due to their gender or sexual orientations, or whether it's just plain old economic desperation. James Baldwin wrote so that people who did not have a voice could be heard. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, Marley, that sounds pretty woke for you. And you're right. You might wonder why I am covering a non-problematic author. Lucky for us, though. I recently watched a video, this video right here, which is exceedingly well done, and also reliably informed me that James Baldwin was, in fact, a problematic person. He liked to date straight-leaning men who were much, much younger than him most of the time. And while that may make some of you a little bit sad to hear, I was jumping for joy, not only because it means that he's free to cover on this channel, but because it means that I might have had a chance. On the back cover of my copy of Giovanni's Room, there is a pull quote by the author Giumpia Lahiri, and here's the quote. It describes Giovanni's Room as a portrait of a man torn between a woman and another man. Now, Lahiri is a very, very good author, and her novel, The Namesake, is very, very good. I would highly recommend you read it. I believe she's actually also a Pulitzer-winning author for her short story collection, The Inventor of Melodies, or Maladies, something like that. I personally haven't read it, but I may sometime in the future. So she's excellent. She's very accomplished. That being said, that is not a good way to describe Giovanni's Room. Yeah, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author is wrong about this one, guys. I'm so fucking annoying. Although it is technically true that Giovanni's Room could be said to contain a love triangle, I don't think that's the best way to describe what's going on here. It's like almost 3/4 of the book, fully 119 pages in my copy, before the woman, Hella, actually shows up in the flesh on the page. And when she does show up, she's not really that well written of a character. She's more of a plot device intended to advance the conflict between Giovanni and the narrator, David. My kind reading on Hella's lack of agency derives from the fact that as the narrator, David basically doesn't really see her as a human being at all. It's kind of that she is a means to an end for him. She's a woman for him to get married to and have kids with, because that's what men do. What Lahiri says about this being a portrait of a man torn between a woman and another man, technically correct, I think, but simplified maybe in the wrong direction. I think the best way to describe this book is to say that it is a novel about love, but that it is not a love story. It follows the narrator, David, who is standing alone in a house in the south of France, describing essentially how he has fucked his life up. And he does this quite young when he seals himself off from the kind of love that he wants to feel. He does this for a variety of reasons, by far the most compelling of which is his own perma-crisis over his sexuality. Important point here. James Baldwin was a queer black man who spent much of his life living as an expat overseas. He's from America, he spent much of his life living in France and really all over Europe. So this novel, it actually plays on the tradition of the American expatriate novel. Think people, you know, like Henry Miller or Ernest Hemingway. And generally speaking, a theme in those expat novels, those earlier expat novels, is that you go overseas to find yourself, to be the person that you can't be in this twisted, fucked up American society. Giovanni's Room, which comes a decade or two after most of those earlier expatriate novels, plays on this tradition. David has not come to France to find himself. He's come to lose himself. The reality of the situation in the novel is that the narrator, David, like Baldwin, is a queer man. What flavor exactly of queer is left up to the reader to a small extent, because David, he doesn't really fit into any one hole too neatly. He's a little too gay to be bisexual, but he's also too bisexual to be gay. Over the course of the novel, he has sexual encounters with men and women, and he finds some kind of release in both of these types of encounters. But there's a world's worth of psychoanalytic gold to be derived from the fact that the women that David has sex with, they are really only described by their more masculine features. Methinks you might have taken the tomboy addiction a little bit far there, Davy, me boy. Giovanni's Room takes place in the mid-1900s. I'm going to say around 1950 because that's when it was published, although no dates are ever really described in the novel. And partially because of the time at which he lived, whatever David is, he feels that it makes him less of a man. This masculinity crisis is established very early on in the novel, as David has his first sexual encounter with another man. When he was a teenager, he had a fling with another boy named Joey. This encounter happens like less than 10 pages into the book, and it's just devastating. It describes something that should be beautiful, and indeed it is, for about the space of 3 paragraphs. My bad, it's actually less than 3 paragraphs. This time when I touched him, something happened in him and in me which made this touch different from any touch either of us had ever known. And he did not resist as he usually did, but lay there where I had pulled him against my chest. And I realized that my heart was beating in an awful way, and that Joey was trembling against me, and the light in the room was very bright and very hot. I started to move and to make some kind of joke, but Joey mumbled something, and I put my head down to hear. Joey raised his head as I lowered mine, and we kissed, as it were, by accident. Then, for the first time in my life, I was really aware of another person's body, of another person's smell. We had our arms around each other. It was like holding in my hand some rare, exhausted, nearly doomed bird which I had miraculously happened to find. I was very frightened. I am sure he was frightened too, and we shut our eyes. To remember it so clearly, so painfully tonight, tells me that I have never for an instant truly forgotten it. I mean, it's young love. It's that first sexual experience happening in an almost cartoonishly perfect way with no awkwardness or hemming and hawing. And then after everything goes down, they wake up in each other's arms the next day. That's when the problems begin. You see, there's a whole world outside of the room that Joey and David are in, and they're a part of that world too. That world has wormed its way into David's head and told him that what has happened under cover of darkness the previous night was something sick, something evil, something that he should be ashamed of. More than being deplorable, it's awful because it makes him less of a man. To compensate for this, David seals himself off. He cuts all contact with Joey basically the next day and goes so far as to bully him later on in the two's life just to reassert his own masculinity. The love that David feels for Joey is out of whack with the love that he sees as ideal, so he just completely disconnects from love. And for the rest of the novel, even in moments of heated, explosive passion, that disconnect remains inside David. It's a ball and chain looped around his leg that really prevents him from being human, being real with anyone else in his life. Giovanni's Room, like most of James Baldwin's work, has been virtually dissected. It's kind of been talked to death, so for me to bring anything truly new to this discussion at this stage, kind of impossible at this stage of my mental development. So instead, I'm going to outline some reasons why I love this book, and ergo, reasons why you should love and read this book, because my opinions, they gotta be yours now. Them's the rules. Number 1. It's a lightning bolt of a read. It's short, like less than 200 pages for my copy, and it's not one of those long, short books either, you know, one that you gotta kind of slog through for a while. No, you hit the ground running on this one. Bam, you're in. I always have to slow myself down when I read it, and even then, I don't think I've ever read Giovanni's Room in less than like 3 days max. Once it's got its hooks in you, you're gone, and you're gone until you get back. Get back meaning you finish the book. The metaphor is all over the place. And in our world, which is always in the grip of an attention deficit crisis, a book being short and instantly engaging is unfortunately, a very attractive quality for it to have. My reason number 2? The prose. For those of you who are unfamiliar, no matter what he was writing, James Baldwin wrote like he was on fire. On every page, you can feel this flaming, urgent need to just get these words out, to communicate the fear, the hurt, the love, the anger, the joy, before all these emotions like choke up and poison him from the inside. As such, here are some of my favorite examples of that prose. "Maybe everything bad that happens to you makes you weaker," said Giovanni, as though he had not heard me, "and so you can stand less and less." Then, looking up at me, "No. The worst thing happened to me long ago, and my life has been awful since that day. You're not going to leave me, are you?" I laughed. Of course not. I started shaking the broken glass off our blanket onto the floor. "I do not know what I would do if you left me." For the first time, I felt the suggestion of a threat in his voice. Or I put it there. "I have been alone so long, I do not think I would be able to live if I had to be alone again." I might try to explain. Giovanni tried to explain. I might ask to be forgiven if I could name and face my crime, if there were anything or anybody anywhere with the power to forgive. No. It would help if I were able to feel guilty, but the end of innocence is also the end of guilt. No matter how it seems now, I must confess, I loved him. I do not think that I will ever love anyone like that again. And this, this is maybe one of the truest sentences about love that anyone's ever written. Or 2 sentences. I was guilty and irritated and full of love and pain. I wanted to kick him, and I wanted to take him in my arms. And reason number 3, perhaps the most important reason that I'm recommending you read this book. The depth of feeling. I have read a lot of books in my life. I've read books that are better written than Giovanni's Room. I have read books that, one could argue, explored similar themes to Giovanni's Room with perhaps more nuance and complexity. What I have never read in all of my reading is a book that makes me feel how Giovanni's Room makes me feel. It puts me up against the wall and it makes me question if I am even a human being at all. The reason that Giovanni's Room feels like no other book to me is the absolute frankness with which it tackles the subject of love. What is love? How does one love? Have you ever loved? Will you ever love? Questions like these. Very light, very easy. Love is a kick in the teeth. It is also the question at the heart of all of James Baldwin's work. He continually asks over and over again what love really looks like, and whether love can survive in a world as full of horrors as this one can be. He's also always painting pictures of what love even really looks like, especially to people who have been beaten half to death by life, by economic desperation, and by the cruelty of bigotry. That's what this one's about. David's problem, though, is it's not like Beale Street, it's his estrangement from love. And it's an estrangement that can feel very identifiable at times, regardless of what you think of David. And that's because throughout Giovanni's Room, throughout the reading experience, you are confronted with the answer to the question, what happens when a person becomes totally cut off from real love? And if you need me to answer it for you, they turn into a monster. And it's not that David is unaware of his own monstrosity. He's a smart individual. He, continually, throughout the course of the narrative, he uses animal metaphors to describe himself. He makes himself less than human, and the situations he finds himself in are sort of outside humanity as well. Giovanni's Room, at one point, the actual room, not the novel, becomes the sea, and David is adrift in it. He's lost all, sense of feeling, all sense of time and place. It's really anything, just to maintain some distance from people. Throughout the novel, there's also a lot of descriptions of people's bodies. He admires humanity more than he's a part of it. The novel takes place during summer, and there are passages where David just admires the bodies of people that pass by and ponders on how when winter comes, people seal themselves up. So love isn't really love for David. It's aesthetic appreciation and sexual objectification. And to be sure, these things make up love, but they aren't really the whole picture. The word gay, also never used in the novel, as I believe the word queer and homosexual, also never used. I could be wrong, feel free to correct me on that one, but I didn't notice them, and this is my 3rd time reading this book. That's partially because Baldwin disliked labels, but it's also partially because David, this broken man, ooh, he hates those labels. Ooh. Oh my god, you know, he spends a lot of time in gay bars because he wants to fuck men, but the gay men who he sees in these bars, the gay men who he interacts with on a daily basis, he hates them. He hates them something fierce. He refers to them derogatorily. He rages against their effeminate affectations because David, you see, he's not like most gay men. No, no, no. He's a man's man, a real manly type of fella. So when David goes out of his way to fuck dudes, it's not gay. Why would it be gay? David has relationships with women and sex with men. What's so wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with that? Well, for David, yes, because he's doing these things concurrently. It should not surprise you that David ruins his life. After all, it's announced at the very beginning of the book. I think what surprises me every time I read this book, and what may surprise you as well, is the extent to which you are able to identify with the story of a man who has been completely cut off from love. And what makes this separation hurt a little bit more, I think, is that David is given a way out, I want to say like a quarter of the way through the book, by Jacques, an effeminate gay man who he hangs out around quite a bit. And it's hard advice, to be sure. It's bleedingly hard advice for David to follow, but it's doubly hard for David to come to terms with it because the person giving that advice is Jacques. David hates Jacques. After all, he hates openly gay men. He hates the more effeminate way in which Jacques chooses to present himself. And it becomes increasingly clear as you read the novel that's because Jacques is everything that David hates about himself. Love is the center of James Baldwin's life's work, and Giovanni's Room, it asks the question, how do I love? More implicitly than explicitly. And the framing of the story of a queer man who just cannot come to terms with his own queerness makes it that much more heartbreaking. Genuinely, when I don't know what to do, the answer is always just break out the cutlass. The ending to this video didn't work at all. I'm sorry for the delay. I wanted this video to come out a lot earlier than it actually did. But that was complicated by a couple things, one of which was life just getting in the way in June, which is the month that I wanted it to come out in. And the other thing that complicated was I shot this video, and I was editing this video, and I realized that the ending sucked. The ending didn't work at all. It involved me telling a story about a guy I once knew who was closeted, and it didn't feel right, so I had to rewrite and then find time to reshoot, which has led us to here, and this video coming out fully probably a month after I wanted it to. And I think what I struggled with when I was trying to end this video initially was bringing things together, making things satisfying. Baldwin is kind of, sadly if you ask me, more relevant than ever nowadays, and you shouldn't really need me to tell you why, but I think I will anyway because I really like the sound of my own voice, if you couldn't tell. In the face of, you know, you see headlines about very powerful people labeling empathy as a sin. And in the face of sentiments like that, Baldwin remains this just essential human voice. I can't put it any better than that. He just cracks you open. He knows how to get into your head. He has just the right words to widen your perspective a little bit. Even if he's just opening the door a tiny, tiny sliver, he's doing the hardest part of that work to open you up to empathy, to love, to all these things that make us human. And this is why love is so vital. Because out of everything that can inspire someone to make change in their life, you know, whether they be money or power or a desire to be feared, because that does motivate some people, love is, at the end of the day, the most powerful of those forces, which is such a cheesy fucking thing to say, but I do think it is true. I mean, you, I, we collectively, we change for and because of what we love. And Baldwin and his work, they remain essential reading in that regard, which is ultimately why I think you should look into his work. Start with Giovanni's Room, start with Go Tell It on the Mountain, start with The Fire Next Time. I don't care where you start, but do start. Alrighty, mateys. The Baldwin video's over now. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you again soon for a video that I'm crossing my fingers will come out sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, this is a postscript to the whole Baldwin thing. I've been talking a lot about love, haven't I? A whole lot about love. What is it? How do we do it? What are its consequences? And because of that, I feel that some of you might label me as being a sort of hippy-dippy type of individual, and that's not gonna fucking stand, frankly. I'm dangerous, I'm unhinged, I'm not normal, you see. And you know what I've been doing recently? I've been reading a lot about pirates. And to illustrate that point, I'm going to wave my sword at the camera and scream at you until you leave